The Pentagon briefing room was colder than Harper expected. The kind of cold that doesn't come from the air conditioning but from judgment. Rows of high-ranking officers sat stiffly, their eyes trained on her, the new lieutenant who had suddenly become the center of every whispered suspicion and veiled accusation. Harper stood at the front, her uniform crisp, the medals and badges on her chest catching the harsh fluorescent lights. They glinted almost defiantly, like tiny mirrors reflecting the doubt in every eye in the room. Colonel Ramirez, a man whose reputation for perfectionism rivaled his temper, stepped forward, boots echoing against the polished floor. His eyes were sharp, scanning her from head to toe as if trying to unearth some flaw she hadn't yet revealed. "Lieutenant Harper," he began, voice low but carrying across the room, "we've reviewed your file. There are discrepancies with your badges. Some of these commendations, they don't match your recorded service. Explain yourself." A wave of murmurs passed through the assembled officers. Harper felt the heat of their skepticism like a weight pressing against her shoulders, but she did not flinch. She had faced doubt before. She had faced men who believed a woman in combat should be relegated to paperwork and surveillance, and she had proven them wrong every single time. Her eyes swept the room with calm precision. "Colonel," she said steadily, voice cutting through the low hum of chatter, "every badge I wear is earned. Every program, every operation, there is documentation. And some of the programs I worked on. You are likely using them in active deployment scenarios even as we speak." The room stiffened. Some officers exchanged uneasy glances, others scoffed, unable or unwilling to process her claim. Ramirez's jaw tightened. "We're not here for boasts, Lieutenant. Evidence. Proof. Otherwise, we strip the badges immediately. This is procedure." Harper's pulse ticked like a metronome, measured but forceful. She knew the procedures, she knew the politics. But above all, she knew her own work, and she knew it had saved lives more than she could ever count. Her gaze didn't waver. "Colonel, I anticipated this. I've prepared a full presentation of logs, mission reports, and encrypted program files. I will demonstrate every operation I designed, executed, and improved. And I assure you, you will see the truth." Ramirez's eyebrows arched sharply, a smirk threatening to form. "You assume too much, Lieutenant. Confidence is good, but overconfidence can be fatal in this environment." Harper held his gaze, unblinking. "Confidence comes from competence, Colonel. I've spent years in operations most of these officers haven't even dreamed of. I did not earn these badges for ceremony. I earned them because my work has consequences that affect lives every day." A young officer in the back, barely more than a second lieutenant, whispered under his breath, "She's braver than most of us." Harper caught the faint murmur, a flicker of admiration hidden among a sea of doubt. That brief acknowledgement fueled her determination, even as she realized how alone she truly was. The tension in the room was electric. It wasn't just about badges. It was about recognition, about legacy, about power. And every officer there had a stake in ensuring that Harper either fit into their narrative or failed spectacularly. "Lieutenant Harper," Ramirez said, voice dropping an octave, "you understand the gravity of this situation. Should you fail to prove yourself, we will rectify the record. Your badges, your commendations, your career trajectory, every one of them, will be adjusted to reflect the board's findings." Harper's jaw tightened. She could feel the sweat prickling her hairline, her palms clammy beneath the stiff fabric of her gloves. But fear wasn't part of her vocabulary. Not now. Not ever. Her eyes swept the room again, scanning the faces of those who doubted her, noting the officers who whispered to one another, the ones who looked outright hostile, and even the ones whose curiosity betrayed a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, the young lieutenant was telling the truth. She remembered the first time she had designed a program in secret, a tactical AI interface that could predict insurgent movements, coordinate special operations teams, and anticipate threats in real time. It had been coded in the dead of night in a dimly lit lab, the hum of servers around her like the heartbeat of a mission that had yet to be realized. At the time, she had been laughed at, called a dreamer, told that a woman couldn't possibly manage a project of such scope. Yet here she was, badges shining, algorithms in active use, and the Pentagon itself relying on her creation. And now they wanted to strip it all away. Strip her away. "Colonel," she said, voice calm but firm, "I am ready to provide full verification of my work. If you choose to proceed with your threats instead, then you are making a decision that will be reviewed not just internally, but at the highest levels. I do not intend to fight you with threats, Colonel. I intend to fight you with facts. And facts, as you know, are indisputable." Ramirez's lips pressed together. His eyes, sharp as a hawk's, seemed to study her for a long, unbearable moment. The officers around him shifted in their seats, sensing the undercurrent of confrontation, the invisible line Harper had drawn in the polished marble floor of the briefing room. Then, in a voice that was both command and challenge, Ramirez said, "We will convene tomorrow morning. You will present your documentation. And, Lieutenant, do not disappoint." Harper nodded once, crisp, precise, "I will not." As she turned and walked out of the room, the soft echo of her boots against the floor sounded like a drumbeat of inevitability. Behind her, the officers whispered, some in doubt, some in awe, others in barely concealed anger. But Harper didn't care what they thought. She knew who she was, and she knew what she had built. And for the first time in months, she allowed herself a small, private smirk. Because she knew something they didn't. The program they depended on, the operations they executed, the lives they claimed to protect, every one of them bore her fingerprints. Every one. And tomorrow, when she revealed the full truth, every single officer in that room would have to confront the reality. They had underestimated her, catastrophically. And somewhere in the shadows, someone was watching, making notes. Someone who would tip the scales in her favor, if only she played her cards carefully. Harper had allies she didn't know were still paying attention, and enemies she hadn't even discovered. The battlefield wasn't outside. It was here, in this sterile room, and it was far more dangerous than any mission she had ever undertaken in the field. Her mind raced through the details, rehearsing the sequence of revelations, the order in which she would release her evidence, the precise points that would leave her critics speechless and force the Pentagon to acknowledge what they had tried to erase. She could feel the adrenaline, a cold, steady fire in her veins. This was more than a career at stake. It was her identity, her work, and her legacy. As she exited into the corridor, Harper allowed herself a moment to breathe. The hallway was quiet, almost empty, except for the echo of her own footsteps and the distant murmur of officers preparing for the next day. She clenched her fists, feeling the weight of anticipation press down, but also the surge of confidence that only comes from knowing the truth. Tomorrow would be a storm, and she was ready. Harper stepped out of the briefing room and into the long, echoing corridor of the Pentagon. The fluorescent lights stretched down the hall like a tunnel, casting sharp shadows against the polished floors. She walked briskly, boots clicking in measured cadence, her mind already replaying the confrontation she had just endured. Each word from Colonel Ramirez and the skeptical officers echoed in her head, mingling with the suppressed whispers and judging eyes that had followed her like predators circling prey. She knew she couldn't rely on intimidation or charm. The only language they would understand was proof, hard, undeniable proof of her work. And yet, as she reached a quiet alcove and leaned against the cold wall, Harper felt the weight of isolation press down. Almost everyone in the room had underestimated her. Almost everyone believed she was a novice, a rookie playing dress-up with someone else's achievements. Her mind drifted back to the origins of the program, the project that had made her indispensable and simultaneously invisible. Years ago, as a young lieutenant, she had been assigned to a small, unremarkable lab tucked deep inside a classified facility in Virginia. There were no accolades, no badges awaiting her there, just dim lights, humming servers, and a handful of colleagues who shared a single dream: to create something that could save lives in ways the Pentagon had never imagined. It started with a single algorithm, a predictive model designed to anticipate insurgent movements in real time. The first prototypes were crude, the simulations imperfect, but Harper had pushed relentlessly. Nights blurred into mornings. Code blurred into strategy. She learned to sleep in short bursts, to read complex mission logs in her dreams, to anticipate problems before they even occurred. Every step forward was met with skepticism from higher-ups. "This is too ambitious," they'd say. "It will never work in the field." Yet Harper persisted. She had a stubborn streak forged by years of being told she didn't belong. Every dismissive glance, every doubting comment became fuel. She experimented, failed, recoded, and tried again, until finally the program became more than a tool. It became a silent partner in the field, guiding missions with precision that human intuition alone could never match. She had watched, years later, as her program quietly influenced critical operations. Missions that had once been chaos became orchestrated with near-perfect coordination. Lives were saved, threats neutralized before they could even materialize. And still, the recognition never came. She was always in the shadows, her achievements attributed to teams she had led or anonymous developers who supposedly worked behind the scenes. Now, with her badges under threat, all that hidden work was suddenly on trial. Harper reached a secure terminal tucked in a deserted hall and keyed in her credentials. The screen flickered to life, revealing the familiar interface she had built, the lifeblood of the program. Each module, each mission log, each decision tree was meticulously cataloged, all time-stamped, all signed with her unique encryption key. As she scrolled, Harper's fingers paused over a folder labeled Operation Sentinel. The mission had been particularly high risk, a covert rescue deep in hostile territory. The data revealed every variable she had predicted, every countermeasure implemented, every life saved by anticipating enemy movements. She traced her own digital signature through each node, feeling a surge of vindication. No one in that Pentagon briefing room could claim ignorance of her contributions. They were encoded in the very architecture of the program. But there was danger here, too. Harper knew that some of the officers questioning her badges weren't just skeptical, they were threatened. Her competence, her innovations, even her very presence challenged the established hierarchy. If she exposed the full extent of her work too early, it could provoke a backlash. Her career could end before she even had a chance to defend herself fully. And some of those plotting against her were ruthless, capable of subtle sabotage that could erase her legacy with a single signature. Her thoughts turned to her mentor, retired General Lawson. He had been one of the few people who truly understood the depth of her work. Years ago, he had warned her, "Harper, the system is never kind to women who do what you do. They'll try to strip you of everything, your medals, your recognition, even your credibility. But remember this, what you build, what you create, no one can take from you unless you allow it. Guard it, know it, own it." Harper remembered his words now with a clarity that burned. She had done exactly that. She had guarded her work, meticulously documented it, and anticipated every possible angle of attack. The files on the screen weren't just evidence, they were armor. A soft chime interrupted her focus, signaling an incoming message on the secure line. Harper clicked it open, eyes narrowing as she read the encrypted note. "They are planning to strip your badges tomorrow. Some high-level officers are coordinating. Trust no one in the review panel, but there is an ally inside. They will reveal themselves when the time is right. Be ready." The message was cryptic, but Harper felt a surge of relief. She wasn't completely alone. Someone had noticed the injustice, someone still believed in her, and they were willing to tip the scales if necessary. Even as she processed the message, Harper's mind was already racing through contingencies. She began rehearsing her defense, mentally walking through each step, how she would present her program logs, the mission simulations, and the undeniable evidence of her leadership. Every detail mattered. Every word could sway the room. One misstep could give her opponents the leverage they craved. She leaned back, running her fingers through her hair, and allowed herself a brief moment of reflection. The path had never been easy. She had fought for every opportunity, every recognition, every inch of credibility. And now it all came down to a single moment, the briefing tomorrow where her work, her badges, and her career would hang in the balance. The room was silent around her except for the soft hum of the terminal. Harper exhaled, steadying herself. She had been here before, not in this exact situation, but in countless field operations where stakes were life and death. The Pentagon Review was no different. It was a battlefield of ego, politics, and power, and she had always been able to navigate such terrain with precision, courage, and an unwavering sense of purpose. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as she pulled up the first set of critical files: encrypted mission logs, AI predictive models, and operational schematics. She traced the paths she had designed, the decisions she had engineered, and the outcomes she had orchestrated. Every node on the network was a testament to her vision, her intellect, and her relentless commitment to excellence. Harper smiled faintly. Let them come for her badges. Let them question her contributions. Tomorrow, she would prove to the entire Pentagon that the woman they doubted was not only competent but indispensable. And when they realized the truth, it would be too late. Every officer in that room would have to acknowledge it. Because Harper didn't just wear the badges, she had earned them in blood, sweat, and intellect. And more importantly, she had designed the program that had saved lives the Pentagon couldn't ignore. As the night deepened and shadows stretched across the empty hallways, Harper shut down the terminal, her mind already strategizing the sequence of revelations she would unleash in the briefing room. She felt a rare mix of calm and anticipation, the kind that only comes before a storm, where victory is not just possible but inevitable. Her pulse slowed, but the tension in her muscles remained, a constant reminder of the battles yet to come. She knew she would face resistance, skepticism, and perhaps even sabotage. But she also knew that truth, when wielded correctly, could not be denied. And tomorrow the Pentagon would have no choice but to confront the undeniable reality. Harper had designed the program, and she could not be erased. The next morning, the briefing room was filled with a low hum of tension. Officers shuffled papers, whispered in corners, and cast subtle, sharp glances at Harper as she entered. She walked with measured confidence, each step echoing in the vast room like a drumbeat heralding her arrival. Her badges, polished to a gleam, reflected the harsh fluorescent lights above, a silent reminder that every accolade she carried had been earned through countless hours of sweat, strategy, and sacrifice. Colonel Ramirez was already at the front, arms crossed, a cold smirk playing on his lips. His eyes scanned the room before settling on her, sharp as a hawk, calculating, dismissive. Around him, the other officers, some skeptical, some curious, watched her like spectators at the start of a storm. "Lieutenant Harper," Ramirez began, voice cutting through the murmurs, "we have reviewed your preliminary evidence. Your claims are ambitious. You expect us to believe that you single-handedly designed and managed the program we have relied on for the last 5 years. Harper's eyes locked onto his, unwavering. "Colonel, I do more than expect you to believe. I am going to show you fact by fact, log by log, mission by mission, that this program, every protocol, every predictive model was designed, tested, and implemented under my direction." A ripple of surprise passed through the room. Some officers exchanged glances, silently acknowledging the audacity of her claim. Others scowled, bracing for confrontation. Harper ignored the skeptics. She didn't need their approval yet. She only needed the undeniable truth to speak for itself. She stepped to the side, motioning toward the bank of screens at the front of the room. With a swift gesture, she activated the system. Instantly, the room was bathed in a cascade of blue light as complex diagrams, mission simulations, and predictive models filled every screen. Lines of code ran alongside live feed maps, operational overlays, and algorithmic forecasts. Gasps filled the air. "What is this?" muttered Major Allen, one of her most vocal critics. His brow furrowed as he tried to digest the sprawling complexity displayed before him. These models, they don't even exist in our official logs." Harper's voice was steady, commanding attention. They exist because I built them. Every variable, every predictive outcome, every operational protocol, trace it, cross-reference it, examine the timestamps. You will find that it all originates from my work. She clicked a sequence of commands, and a simulation of Operation Sentinel sprang to life on the central screen. Every move, every decision, every calculated maneuver that had saved lives in hostile territory unfolded in near real time. Harper pointed to key nodes. These decisions, these predictive alerts, they prevented casualties. Each algorithm, each coordination protocol was designed to anticipate threats before they materialized. I didn't just participate. I designed the framework that guided every operative in the field. Whispers grew louder. The room was no longer just tense, it was electrified with disbelief. Officers leaned forward, scrutinizing the data, murmuring technical analyses to each other. Some had never seen the program in action, had never appreciated the depth of her work, and now the proof was undeniable. Colonel Ramirez's jaw tightened, and a flicker of uncertainty passed over his expression. "Lieutenant, are you suggesting that our operations depended entirely on your program?" Harper's gaze did not waver. "I am not suggesting, Colonel. I am demonstrating. And if you examine the historical logs, you will see that every operation where outcomes were favorable, every reduction in casualties, and every successful mission trajectory directly correlates with my predictive modeling." The officers scrambled, pulling up internal logs, comparing timestamps, and muttering among themselves. Harper had anticipated every move. They could no longer argue without exposing their own lack of oversight. Then she shifted the focus, opening the mission debrief archive. Every page contained her encrypted signatures, documenting enhancements, patches, and real-time decisions she had authorized. "Every protocol you've implemented this year alone," she said, "was developed, tested, and verified by my team under my supervision. Cross-reference any decision with my records. You'll see they are mine, indisputable." A senior officer leaned over a console, eyes wide as he whispered, This is incredible. She really did design it all." Harper allowed herself a brief, subtle smile. For the first time in the room, some officers were seeing her not as a threat or an anomaly, but as the architect of the systems they relied on daily. Yet she knew there was one more obstacle, the human ego. Some would still resist, not because the facts were wrong, but because accepting the truth would be humiliating. Colonel Ramirez's voice was low, controlled, but laced with frustration. "Lieutenant Harper, if what you claim is true, this is unprecedented. But how do we verify your claims beyond the digital footprint? There must be human oversight, witnesses, confirmations, something tangible." Harper reached into her folder and pulled out mission logs, signed reports from field operatives, and personal annotations from commanders who had worked under her guidance. Each document had her encrypted signature, timestamps, and procedural verification codes. She laid them on the table with deliberate precision. "These are tangible, signed, verified, and cross-referenced. Every operative listed here can attest to the program's protocols, the decisions made under my direction, and the outcomes achieved. This isn't theory, Colonel, it's documented history." The room fell into a stunned silence. Some officers were flipping through the pages, comparing files on screens, their expressions shifting from skepticism to awe. Major Allen swallowed hard, his previous sneer replaced by wide-eyed realization. She actually did all this. Every single module, every simulation, it's hers. Harper held her stance, eyes scanning the room. She sensed the shift, the moment when doubt turned into acknowledgement, resistance into reluctant respect. And yet she did not relax. She knew that human pride and bureaucratic politics were unpredictable. Even with evidence in hand, there were officers who would resist, who would try to undermine her credibility through other means. Colonel Ramirez finally broke the silence. He leaned back, exhaling sharply, a mixture of frustration and grudging admiration crossing his features. "Lieutenant Harper, it appears we underestimated your contributions. Your program, it's extraordinary, indisputable." Harper nodded, allowing the weight of the words to settle over the room. She did not gloat. She did not smile. Recognition was not her goal, acknowledgement of the truth was. The room, however, had not yet seen the full scope of her work. There were more simulations, more mission trajectories, more predictive models that could leave even the most skeptical officer questioning their assumptions about what one person could accomplish. And as she prepared to reveal the next layer of her work, Harper noticed a subtle movement in the back of the room, a hand shifting a file, an officer leaning forward with more intensity than necessary. She sensed it immediately. Someone in that room was not just watching, they were plotting. They hadn't given up, and the confrontation was far from over. Harper allowed herself a silent acknowledgement of the challenge. She had anticipated this, and when the next phase of her presentation began, the truth would hit with even greater force. Because what they were about to see was not just her involvement, it was her design, her vision, and her genius. The day after the confrontation, the Pentagon corridors felt unusually oppressive. Harper walked briskly, her heels clicking against the polished marble floors like gunshots in the silent hallways. The room she had left behind, the one where she had laid out irrefutable proof of her work, should have been a victory. Instead, unease gnawed at her. Even though the evidence had been undeniable, she knew better than to trust appearances. In bureaucracies like the Pentagon, merit rarely guaranteed respect. Politics, jealousy, and hidden agendas ruled the day, and Harper had already sensed that not everyone in that briefing room had been convinced or honest. Later that evening, Harper returned to her secure office, a small, windowless space filled with servers and encrypted terminals. The glow of the monitors cast eerie shadows across her determined face. She logged into her private system, checking operational logs and reviewing the simulations she had presented. Everything was intact. Every timestamp, every signature, every algorithm bore her mark. But the nagging sense of threat lingered, like the faint hiss of a predator in the dark. Then a secure email pinged on her device. She froze. The sender was anonymized, encrypted, and clearly internal. She clicked cautiously. "We're taking everything away tomorrow. Be ready. Trust no one. The panel has coordinated against you. Some of them will act openly, some will act in silence. But there is a way to counter them. Be vigilant." Her heart skipped. She had expected resistance, maybe even skepticism, but this was explicit. Someone powerful, someone embedded deep within the hierarchy, was actively plotting to strip her of her badges, to erase her contributions, and they were willing to move covertly to achieve it. Harper's pulse quickened, but her mind raced faster. She knew instinctively that surviving this would require both precision and patience. A direct confrontation could backfire. She needed leverage, and she had it, the program itself. Every piece of it bore her signature, her logic, her strategic design. Any attempt to erase her would expose them. She leaned back in her chair, running through possibilities. Who could be orchestrating this? Ramirez? Major Allen? Or someone else entirely, someone more insidious operating from the shadows? She remembered the subtle movements during the previous briefing, the officer in the back shifting files, the quiet glances exchanged. They were more than curious, they were calculating. Harper allowed herself a moment of reflection. The betrayal cut deeper than any battlefield wound. Out there, she had faced hostile territory, enemies with guns and explosives. But this betrayal was internal, insidious, and strategic. It was a war of information, influence, and perception. She couldn't fight it with force. She needed cunning, timing, and patience. She began reviewing her allies. There were few, but enough. General Lawson, retired but influential, had always been a supporter. Certain field operatives had first-hand knowledge of her work. A handful of engineers and analysts within the program knew its intricacies and could verify her contributions without question. Harper made a mental list of contacts she could trust, and those she couldn't. Then came a chilling realization. The anonymous email hinted at someone in the inner circle, watching, waiting. Not all allies were visible. Some enemies hid behind a veneer of loyalty. One wrong move and her career, and the program she had built, could be dismantled before anyone recognized her genius. Harper activated a secondary secure terminal and began mapping out the internal hierarchy. She cross-referenced personnel records with her operational logs, searching for anomalies. Patterns emerged. Certain officers had questioned protocols, repeatedly suggested procedural audits, and yet had no apparent operational responsibilities in the areas Harper had led. Someone was positioning themselves to challenge her credibility, carefully coordinating with higher authorities. The magnitude of the betrayal pressed down like a lead weight. Harper clenched her fists, her mind racing through countermeasures. She couldn't confront them openly, not yet. She needed evidence, leverage, and timing. Her strategy was simple. Let the first moves be theirs, anticipate their next steps, and then turn the entire operation against them. As the night deepened, Harper reviewed classified mission data, tracing the program's implementation across multiple theaters. Each operational success was a testament to her work, each failure prevented by her foresight. She realized she wasn't just defending badges, she was defending lives, the integrity of operations, and her professional identity. Her thoughts drifted to her early days, working alone in the dim lab with only 2 trusted colleagues. They had dreamed of creating a system that could predict and prevent danger, saving lives without ever being recognized. Harper had coded every line, tested every scenario, and now, ironically, the same secrecy that had protected the program was what made her vulnerable. Those who wanted her gone were counting on the opacity of her achievements to erase her legacy quietly. A soft chime echoed in her office, another encrypted message. Harper opened it, heart racing. The first attempt will be made in the morning briefing. Some will challenge your logs. Others will question the authenticity of your signatures. Expect coordinated attacks on multiple fronts. Do not reveal your cards yet. You have allies, use them wisely. Harper's eyes narrowed. The betrayal was no longer theoretical, it was imminent. The briefing tomorrow would not just be a discussion of badges. It would be a test of her strategic foresight, her ability to anticipate the moves of those who sought to undermine her, and her capacity to control the narrative. She began preparing. Digital backups, secondary verification logs, testimonies from field operatives, all organized in layers. Harper knew that transparency alone would not suffice. She needed to orchestrate the revelation in a way that would make opposition impossible. If they attacked too early, they would expose themselves. If they hesitated, she could control the flow of information. Timing was everything. Hours passed. Harper reviewed each file, each log, each simulation with obsessive attention. She mapped out the sequence in which she would reveal her work, anticipating potential objections and countering them in advance. Every possible scenario, every potential threat, every subtle form of betrayal had a preemptive response. By the time dawn approached, Harper was exhausted, yet a fierce determination burned within her. The battle ahead was not in the field, but in the boardrooms, the briefing rooms, and the minds of those who had underestimated her. She had faced enemies with guns, explosives, and extreme peril, but this challenge required a different kind of courage, patience, intellect, and an unwavering belief in the truth of her work. As she finally shut down her terminal, Harper allowed herself a quiet smile. The betrayal was real, the threat imminent, but she was ready. Tomorrow, the officers who sought to erase her accomplishments would meet the undeniable reality. She was not just a badge wearer, a subordinate, or a statistic. She was the architect of the program that had shaped operations, saved lives, and changed the way the Pentagon functioned. The corridors of the Pentagon, silent in the pre-dawn light, seemed almost alive with anticipation. Harper stepped out, her boots echoing like a heartbeat of inevitability. The storm was coming, and she would not be the one caught off guard. The morning sun barely touched the Pentagon's steel and glass facade when Harper arrived at her office. The hallways, still damp with the faint chill of night, echoed with the footsteps of officers preparing for the day's briefings. Harper moved with purpose, her eyes scanning for anything unusual, glances that lingered too long, shadows that seemed out of place, and subtle gestures that hinted at coordination among her detractors. She knew the attack would come. She had anticipated it. But Harper also knew she had an advantage no one else could claim: the program itself. Every line of code, every predictive model, every mission log carried her unique digital signature. It was more than proof, it was leverage. And it was untouchable, hidden behind layers of encryption and access protocols that only she could navigate. Sitting down at her terminal, Harper began cross-referencing files, reviewing operational data and preparing contingencies. She traced every path her program had influenced, every mission that had relied on her predictive models, every decision tree that had saved lives. The deeper she delved, the clearer the picture became. She wasn't just defending her badges, she was defending the integrity of the operations themselves. Then Harper noticed something in the logs that made her heart skip a beat. A series of minor anomalies, small deviations in mission protocols, subtle requests for overrides, had appeared in the past few months. The deviations were too coordinated to be accidental. Someone was testing the system, probing for weaknesses, perhaps preparing to challenge her credibility by creating the illusion of error. Harper leaned closer to the screen, her mind racing. Whoever was behind this had underestimated her foresight. She had anticipated potential sabotage, and she had already encoded alerts into the system to flag any unauthorized manipulation. The anomalies triggered her internal protocols, sending encrypted notifications to a secure line only she and a few trusted allies had access to. A faint smile touched her lips. She wasn't just reacting, she was ready to counterattack. Harper began drafting a meticulous strategy, layering evidence, simulations, and testimony in a sequence designed to expose any interference while simultaneously reinforcing her credibility. Timing, she knew, would be everything. The moment the conspirators made their move, the truth would strike like a scalpel, cutting through lies, deceit, and doubt. Her thoughts turned to her allies. General Lawson was still her most reliable support, but she also had several operatives in the field who could verify the operational integrity of her program. Harper began coordinating discreetly, sending encrypted messages to her contacts, instructing them to verify logs, provide confirmation, and prepare statements if necessary. She didn't want them involved prematurely. Their testimony would be most powerful at the precise moment of confrontation. As the hours passed, Harper reviewed her own history with the program. She remembered the countless nights coding in isolation, testing scenarios that seemed impossible, and solving problems that no one else dared to confront. The program had grown under her direction, evolving beyond the original parameters she had set, adapting to real-world operations in ways even she had not fully anticipated. It was elegant, efficient, and most importantly, irrefutable. Then a notification blinked on her screen, a secure message from an unknown internal sender. Harper opened it cautiously. "We've observed the anomalies. They are real. The panel plans to challenge you openly. Timing is critical. Wait for the right moment. Do not act prematurely." The message confirmed what Harper had already suspected. The attack was imminent, coordinated, and designed to exploit the smallest misstep. But she felt no fear. Instead, she felt a rush of exhilaration. This was not just about defending her badges anymore. It was about exposing corruption, demonstrating her genius, and ensuring the program remained untarnished. Harper spent the rest of the day preparing. She organized every document, every simulation, every mission log into a coherent, unassailable presentation. She rehearsed her explanation, anticipating every question, every doubt, and every attempt to discredit her. She mapped out a sequence. First, reveal the operational history. Second, demonstrate the predictive algorithms in real-time simulations. Third, expose any anomalies and tie them back to unauthorized interference. And finally, present irrefutable testimony from field operatives. By evening, Harper's office was a war room of strategy and precision. Screens glowed with operational data, and encrypted files were stacked in meticulous order. She could almost see the battlefield forming, not outside in hostile territory, but inside the walls of the Pentagon, where ego, politics, and secrecy would collide. A soft ping on her terminal drew her attention. It was a verification message from one of her trusted field operatives. All systems verified. Logs are clean. Ready when you are. Harper's pulse quickened. The first layer of defense was in place, and her allies were positioned to confirm her credibility at a moment's notice. Harper leaned back, closing her eyes for a brief moment. She allowed herself to acknowledge the enormity of what she had built, the program that no one had credited her for, the operations it had influenced, the lives it had saved. And now it would serve a new purpose, not just operational excellence, but personal vindication. The night was quiet, but Harper could feel the storm approaching. The conspirators would make their move at the next briefing. They would attempt to discredit her, to strip her badges, to erase her legacy. But Harper was ready. She had anticipated every angle, every strategy, every potential interference. And when they acted, the truth would hit them with the force of undeniable evidence. As she prepared to leave her office, Harper allowed herself a moment of reflection. She knew that she held a hidden advantage, the very program they sought to challenge, the system that had made her indispensable, was also her shield. And when the right moment came, it would become her sword. Walking down the dimly lit corridor toward her quarters, Harper felt a surge of confidence. She wasn't just a lieutenant facing political sabotage. She was the architect of a system that had transformed operations and saved countless lives. And tomorrow, when the conspirators moved, they would discover just how unassailable she truly was. The Pentagon was a fortress of bureaucracy and power, but Harper had something even stronger: foresight, preparation, and an intimate understanding of a program that no one else could manipulate without revealing their own hand. She had built her hidden advantage, and now it was time to wield it. The morning of the final review arrived with a charged intensity that Harper could feel in her bones. The Pentagon briefing room, usually austere and orderly, seemed almost alive with anticipation. Officers shuffled papers nervously, whispered in low tones, and stole glances at Harper as she walked toward the front. Today was not just a briefing, it was a battlefield, and Harper was armed with the truth, precision, and the program that no one dared to challenge openly. Colonel Ramirez was waiting, standing rigidly at the head of the table, his arms crossed, his expression a careful mask of authority. Behind him, a panel of senior officers watched, some skeptical, some curious, some quietly hostile. Harper's presence disrupted their equilibrium, as if the air itself had thickened with tension. "Lieutenant Harper," Ramirez began, voice sharp and commanding, "we've reviewed your preliminary evidence, but questions remain. Today, we will examine the validity of your claims and determine whether your badges reflect your contributions." Harper's pulse was steady, though adrenaline coursed through her veins. She knew this moment would define her career. More importantly, it would determine whether the program she had built, her legacy, would be recognized or buried. She met Ramirez's gaze calmly. "Colonel, I am prepared to demonstrate in full the scope and impact of my work. Every operation, every protocol, every predictive model, all documented, verified, and operational. You will see the truth, and it cannot be disputed." With a swift gesture, she activated the main console. Instantly, the room was bathed in cascading blue light as mission simulations, operational overlays, and algorithmic models filled the screens. Lines of code, graphs, and heat maps scrolled in real time, showing the intricate patterns of operations Harper had designed. The panel leaned forward, some in disbelief, others in awe. The predictive algorithms and operational protocols on display were unprecedented, far beyond what most officers in the room understood. Harper had anticipated this. She began systematically walking through the program, highlighting key operations, decision nodes, and life-saving interventions. Operation Sentinel, she said, tapping a simulation on the central screen. This mission was executed under high-risk conditions. Every decision, every adjustment, every predictive alert came from the algorithms I designed. The outcomes were not chance. They were engineered, tested, and verified by my work. Gasps echoed across the room. Officers compared the simulations to their internal logs, their skepticism crumbling under the weight of undeniable evidence. One by one, the discrepancies that had fueled the conspiracy against her were revealed as fabrications, misunderstandings, or deliberate obfuscations. Major Allen, who had been one of her most vocal critics, muttered under his breath, She really did design all of this." His earlier arrogance had been replaced by stunned recognition. Harper didn't pause. She had more to reveal. With a few keystrokes, she pulled up a network of field reports, each signed and time-stamped. "Every operational success you've achieved using this program," she said, her voice calm but commanding, "was guided by the protocols I developed. And every anomaly, every deviation has been flagged, analyzed, and addressed by me. This is not theoretical. This is verifiable, irrefutable, and directly linked to my work." As officers scrolled through the reports, Harper noticed subtle movements in the back of the room, officers shifting nervously, exchanging glances. The conspirators were realizing that their plan was unraveling. They had underestimated her foresight and preparation, and now they were exposed. Then Harper revealed the final piece: real-time predictive simulations for ongoing operations. She demonstrated how her algorithms could anticipate threats, optimize resources, and coordinate teams with precision that human oversight alone could not achieve. The room fell into stunned silence. Some officers whispered, others stared, and a few sat frozen, unable to process the magnitude of what they were seeing. Colonel Ramirez cleared his throat, his expression betraying a mix of frustration and admiration. "Lieutenant Harper, this is extraordinary. If what you claim is true, it is unprecedented." Harper held his gaze. "Colonel, it is not a claim. It is a documented reality. Every success, every operational improvement, every life saved, all traced directly to my design and implementation. I did not wear these badges for recognition alone. I earned them because of results, outcomes, and impact that cannot be denied." The atmosphere shifted. Officers who had once doubted her were now acknowledging, silently and visibly, the depth of her contribution. The conspirators, realizing their attack had failed, grew tense, their previous confidence replaced by fear. Harper's hidden advantage, the program itself, fully under her control, was her shield and her weapon. Then she paused, allowing the weight of her next revelation to sink in. "And let us consider any attempt to undermine this work," she said, voice steady and deliberate. "Any interference with this program is immediately traceable. Every action leaves a digital signature. Any attempt to challenge my contributions will expose the truth. Those who sought to discredit me were operating with incomplete information, and in some cases, deliberate deception." A senior officer, previously silent, leaned forward. "Lieutenant, are you saying that someone within this room attempted to manipulate or challenge the program?" Harper nodded subtly. "Yes, there have been coordinated efforts to question my contributions, but every attempt has been anticipated and logged. Any such effort only reinforces the integrity and irrefutability of my work." The room was tense. Officers whispered to each other, some in awe, some in silent embarrassment. Ramirez's jaw tightened, his authority challenged not by brute force but by undeniable evidence and meticulous preparation. He cleared his throat again. "Lieutenant Harper, it seems we underestimated you. Your work, your leadership, it's extraordinary. There is no reason to strip your badges." Harper allowed herself a small, controlled smile. Victory was not in gloating. It was in recognition of the truth, of her contribution, and of the meticulous preparation that had outmaneuvered her detractors. Even as the room absorbed the revelation, Harper remained alert. She had won this battle, but she knew the nature of power and politics within the Pentagon. Allies and enemies alike had been revealed, and she had taken note. Some officers would quietly respect her, others would quietly resent her, and some would continue to plot. But for now, the undeniable reality of her genius, her leadership, and her badges was established. As she stepped back from the console, the tension in the room slowly eased. Officers who had mocked, doubted, or plotted against her now looked at her with a mixture of respect, curiosity, and perhaps fear. Harper knew the recognition she had fought for, and meticulously prepared to secure, was now unassailable. She turned toward Ramirez, her expression calm but resolute. "Colonel, this is not about pride or titles. It is about integrity, accountability, and the lives that depend on this program. I did not seek recognition for its own sake, but for the mission, for the people, and for the results. The badges are a reflection of that work, nothing more." Ramirez, uncharacteristically silent, simply nodded. The weight of the truth was undeniable. The Pentagon's corridors were buzzing with a mixture of reverence and quiet whispers the morning after Harper's triumph. Word of her demonstration had already spread, and officers who had doubted her, some openly, some behind closed doors, were now forced to confront the reality they had tried to ignore. Harper moved through the hallways with the calm authority of someone who had survived a storm and emerged stronger, though every step reminded her that recognition in the Pentagon was never permanent. She had won the immediate confrontation, but Harper knew better than anyone that battles in this environment were rarely singular events. Her enemies were not defeated. They were humiliated, yes, but humiliation could breed subtle, dangerous retaliation. Harper's focus was on solidifying her victory and ensuring that her contributions would remain protected. The first order of business was the formal acknowledgement of her work. Harper had prepared comprehensive documentation, verified and cross-referenced down to the smallest operational detail. She entered a secure meeting room where senior Pentagon officials, including Colonel Ramirez, waited. Unlike the tension-filled confrontations of the previous days, this meeting carried a weight of official protocol. Today, Harper was not defending herself. She was claiming her rightful recognition. "Lieutenant Harper," Ramirez began, his voice carrying a measured respect now, "after reviewing the full scope of your work, the department acknowledges that your contributions were foundational to the program and operational success. Effective immediately, your badges, commendations, and recognitions are formally confirmed and recorded." Harper's lips curved into a subtle smile, not of triumph, but of quiet satisfaction. She had expected the formal acknowledgement, yet hearing it pronounced aloud still carried a sense of vindication. She had fought for this truth not for ego, but because the integrity of the program and countless lives depended on it. The room exhaled collectively, some officers muttering congratulations, others shifting uncomfortably under the weight of their previous skepticism. Harper's gaze swept the room, noting the faces of those who had doubted her and the ones who had supported her quietly. She knew that acknowledgement was only part of the battle. The real challenge would be navigating the subtle currents of power and envy that would continue to flow beneath the surface. Even as formal recognition was given, Harper remained vigilant. She had anticipated attempts at subtle retaliation, manipulated memos, strategic reassignment, and quiet undermining, but she had also anticipated how to counter these moves. The program itself was her safeguard. Any tampering or interference would be traced back, and any effort to diminish her contributions would expose the perpetrators. Later that afternoon, Harper convened a confidential meeting with her most trusted allies. General Lawson, now a quiet yet formidable presence, was among them. Field operatives who had first-hand knowledge of the program's operational success were also present, along with key engineers who understood the intricacies of her designs. "We've secured the immediate acknowledgement," Harper began, her voice calm but commanding. "But we are not finished. There are individuals who may still attempt to manipulate perceptions or challenge future operations. We need to ensure continued oversight, verification, and transparency to prevent any further attempts at undermining the program." One of the engineers, a young analyst named Rivera, nodded. "The logs, simulations, and predictive models can be configured for enhanced traceability. Any unauthorized intervention will trigger immediate alerts." Harper allowed herself a small nod of approval. "Exactly. We will maintain control, and we will make it impossible for anyone to attack our work without exposure. The moment we detect interference, we respond, not with emotion but with irrefutable evidence." Even as the team discussed logistics and safeguards, Harper's mind was alert to the political landscape. She knew that formal acknowledgement did not erase envy, resentment, or ambition. Some officers would bide their time, waiting for the smallest opportunity to challenge her. Harper's strategic advantage, however, was that she understood the program and the lives it affected better than anyone. She had built the framework, and she could control the narrative as long as she remained vigilant. By evening, Harper reviewed her personal archives once more. Every operational success, every life saved, every predictive algorithm was documented, cross-referenced, and backed up across multiple secure systems. She felt a surge of quiet pride. This was not about medals or recognition. It was about ensuring that the work she had sacrificed so much for remained intact and influential. But even as she allowed herself this moment of reflection, Harper was aware of a lingering tension. Subtle indicators suggested that some officers, humbled by the exposure of their underestimation, were now plotting quieter forms of opposition. There would be no overt confrontation. Instead, there would be whispers, strategic reassignment, and attempts to shape future operational decisions in ways that could limit her influence. Harper understood that this was the nature of the Pentagon. Politics interwoven with power, influence wielded subtly, and reputations as weapons. Harper did not fear this. She had anticipated it, and she had prepared. The same meticulous attention she had applied to designing the program now extended to safeguarding her position and influence. She reinforced secure channels of communication with her allies, ensured that critical decisions were traceable, and continued to monitor operational data for anomalies or signs of interference. The final challenge, Harper knew, was psychological. Recognition alone would not silence doubt or envy. She needed to command respect without arrogance, demonstrate authority without provocation, and ensure that her presence remained both undeniable and unassailable. That evening, as Harper walked alone through the Pentagon's corridors, she allowed herself a rare, private smile. She had faced disbelief, skepticism, and conspiracy. She had confronted betrayal, orchestrated a response, and secured acknowledgement of her achievements. And yet, she remained vigilant, aware that true mastery of her position required constant awareness, adaptability, and strategic foresight. The quiet halls seemed to echo with a subtle affirmation of her journey. She had transformed doubt into evidence, resistance into recognition, and threat into opportunity. Harper knew that the storm she had weathered was not just about badges. It was about asserting truth, demonstrating capability, and ensuring that the work she had sacrificed so much to build would continue to save lives. And yet, even in this moment of triumph, Harper felt the stirrings of future challenges. Power in the Pentagon was rarely static. Recognition could shift, allegiances could change, and the subtle politics she had navigated would require constant attention. But for now, she had prevailed. She had turned the tables on her conspirators, exposed their limitations, and claimed the acknowledgement she had earned. The Pentagon was quiet that morning, deceptively calm. Harper moved through its vast corridors with purpose, her uniform sharp, her badges gleaming in the soft light of the early sun. Every step was measured, deliberate, an echo of the confidence and authority she had earned, piece by piece, day by day, through battles that no one else had seen. Today was the culmination of weeks of tension, political maneuvering, and meticulous preparation. The conspirators who had tried to strip her of her badges and discredit her contributions were no longer openly hostile, but Harper knew they were lurking, quietly resentful, calculating subtler forms of sabotage. She had anticipated this, and now she intended to secure not just recognition, but an unassailable legacy. Her first stop was the secure operations room, the heart of the program she had designed. The bank of screens flickered to life, displaying a web of algorithms, predictive models, and operational overlays that she had built and refined over the years. Harper ran her fingers lightly across the console, checking logs, verifying signatures, and reviewing active operations. Everything was in order. Every line of code, every operational decision, every predictive model bore her indelible mark. She smiled faintly. This was her fortress, her sword, and her shield. Next, Harper convened her allies, General Lawson, field operatives who had relied on her program in high-risk operations, and key engineers who understood its complexities. "Today," she said, her voice calm but commanding, "we consolidate our victory. Recognition is not enough. We need to ensure that the integrity of this program and the acknowledgement of the work behind it is secure for the long term. Any attempt to undermine it will be immediately visible and countered with irrefutable evidence." She distributed secure dossiers, each containing verified logs, encrypted reports, and documented decision histories. These would serve as unassailable proof of her leadership and authorship, a shield against any future attempts to challenge her credibility. Harper knew that power within the Pentagon was rarely permanent, and control over information was the most reliable defense against subtle attacks. With preparations complete, Harper moved to the final, decisive step, confronting the remaining skeptics and conspirators directly. The briefing room, where weeks of doubt and tension had played out, was quiet as she entered. Officers who had once questioned her now faced her with a mixture of respect, unease, and curiosity. Ramirez, who had been the most vocal doubter, looked at her with a combination of admiration and reluctant acknowledgement. "Lieutenant Harper," Ramirez said, his voice measured, "we understand the full scope of your work. The department formally acknowledges your contributions. Your badges, your commendations, and your leadership are fully recognized." Harper nodded, her expression composed but resolute. "Colonel, this acknowledgement is appreciated, but the true priority is operational integrity. The program I built saves lives and guides missions. Its efficacy must remain protected, regardless of politics or personal agendas. My work is not about titles or recognition. It's about results, accountability, and integrity." A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. Officers who had once doubted her now saw the undeniable truth. Harper's work had been instrumental, her foresight impeccable, and her leadership unchallengeable. Even those who had conspired against her knew they could not contest the evidence she had presented. Yet Harper's mind remained alert. Recognition today did not guarantee complacency tomorrow. She anticipated subtle attempts at influence, bureaucratic maneuvering, and quiet challenges to her authority, and she had prepared for all of it. By the end of the session, she had established protocols for secure verification, monitoring of operational adjustments, and real-time auditing to ensure that any interference with the program could be immediately traced and countered. As the meeting adjourned, Harper lingered in the room, absorbing the moment. She had fought not just for badges but for respect, for truth, and for the integrity of a program that saved lives daily. Every step of the way, she had encountered skepticism, resistance, and outright hostility, but she had overcome it all through foresight, preparation, and unshakable confidence in her own abilities. Her thoughts drifted to the long nights in the lab, the isolated coding sessions, and the countless hours of testing and verification. She had built something extraordinary, something far beyond the comprehension of most officers in the Pentagon. And now, finally, the world recognized it, not just through badges or commendations, but through respect for the undeniable impact of her work. Outside the briefing room, Harper walked the halls of the Pentagon, her mind both calm and alert. She had achieved recognition, but she had also secured something more enduring: a legacy. The program she had designed, the lives it had protected, and the operational excellence it had enabled were all testaments to her vision, intellect, and perseverance. Even as she reflected on her achievements, Harper remained aware of the subtle currents of politics that would continue to flow around her. The conspirators who had attempted to undermine her were still present in the institution, their resentment muted but not extinguished. Yet she no longer feared them. She had anticipated their moves, countered their strategies, and demonstrated irrefutable mastery over her work. Any future attempts at interference would be immediately exposed. Harper paused in the quiet corridor, looking out over the sprawling Pentagon complex. The morning sun reflected off the glass walls, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch toward the horizon. She allowed herself a brief, private smile, a recognition not just of victory, but of the journey she had undertaken. From skepticism to betrayal, from doubt to acknowledgement, she had navigated every challenge with intelligence, resilience, and unwavering commitment to the truth. Her thoughts then turned inward. Harper realized that the true measure of her success was not in the badges on her uniform or the accolades she had earned, but in the lives her program had touched and the impact it would continue to have. That knowledge, quiet but profound, was a reward that no skeptic could ever take away. As she walked back to her office, Harper felt a sense of completeness. She had faced betrayal, doubt, and political maneuvering, and she had emerged victorious. Her badges were safe, her contributions recognized, and her program secured. And yet, she knew that the world of the Pentagon, with its shifting allegiances and subtle power plays, would always require vigilance. She was prepared. At the end of the day, Harper returned to the secure operations room, where the heart of her program pulsed silently on the monitors. She ran through the logs one last time, confirming the integrity of every mission, every predictive algorithm, and every operational protocol. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the servers, the heartbeat of the system she had built and protected. Harper allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. The journey had been arduous, fraught with skepticism and betrayal, yet she had persevered. She had proven not only her own capabilities, but the power of diligence, preparation, and unwavering commitment to truth. The badges on her chest were more than symbols. They were a testament to her vision, her courage, and her resilience. And as the lights of the Pentagon dimmed for the evening, Harper knew this was only the beginning. Her work, her program, and her legacy were now fully recognized, but she would continue to safeguard them, expand their impact, and ensure that the lives saved and missions guided by her designs would never be diminished by doubt or envy.